Hey everybody, ladies in particular, welcome back to our channel. We are Talks with Torah Women, and today we will be sharing our thoughts and opinions on the book of Esther Chapter 2. We are four Torah believing women who are studying together and discussing our views and beliefs that we have come across and feel convicted about. We intend this video to be only for women. Men who choose to stay and listen do so at their own discretion. Any nasty comments will be deleted and you will be blocked. So we have with us, first is Sierra Burleson from Tennessee. She's married for 3 years, a stay-at-home mother of two with 2 children, and she is an online ESL teacher. And I'm Gabrielle Fox. I'm from Oklahoma. I'm 28 years old, married for 7 years. I have a background in the health and wellness fitness industry, and I'm currently aspiring to become a holistic nutritionist health coach. And currently I operate an in-home organic toxic-free daycare. And then we also have Monica Marie from California. She is an international English instructor and founder of a language school. She loves linguistics and language learning. She's also a college professor, and she is currently growing an organic fruits and vegetables garden. And then we also have Gabby Fox from Arizona, who is actually my sister in love. She has been married for 6 years. She is a mother of 2 and a flight instructor. So she teaches others how to fly, which is pretty awesome. So to get us started off, Sierra is going to be reading Esther chapter 2 for us, and then we'll get into our discussion.
Okay. And I will be reading out of the ESV. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's young men who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem in Susa the citadel, under custody of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetics be given them. And let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This pleased the king, and he did so. Now there was a Jew in Susa, the citadel, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem among the captives, carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, the daughter of his uncle, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. And when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So when the king's order and his edict were proclaimed, and when many young women were gathered in Susa, the citadel, in custody of Hegai, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of Hegai, who had charge of the women. And the young woman pleased him and won his favor, and he quickly provided her with her cosmetics and her portion of food, and with 7 chosen young women from the king's palace, and advanced her and her young women to the best place in the harem. Esther had not made known her people or kindred, for Mordecai had commanded her not to make it known. And every day Mordecai walked in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Now when the turn came for each young woman to go into King Ahasuerus, after being 12 months under the regulations for the women, since this was the regular period of their beautifying, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and ointments for women. When the young woman went into the king in this way, she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go in, and in the morning she would return to the second harem in custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She would not go in to the king again unless the king delighted in her, and she was summoned by name. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her and his own daughter to go into the king, She asked for nothing except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge of the women, advised. Now Esther was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And when Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign, the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great feast for all his officials and servants. It was Esther's feast. He also granted a remission of taxes to the provinces and gave gifts with royal generosity. Now when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not made known her kindred or her people, as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther obeyed Mordecai just as when she was brought up by him. In those days, as Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, the men were both hanged on the gallows, and it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king.
All right, so I'm a little bit confused with what was going on with the harem. There was like 2 harems, and they would go back and forth or something like that. Can someone just kind of summarize that for me real quick?
So in verse 13, when it says, then when the girl went to see the king, whatever she wanted would be given to her. Is that what you're talking about? Like at the top of there?
Yeah, that's that whole
house to the king's palace. In mine it says, so in verse 14 it says she would go in the evening, and on the following day she would return to another part of the harem's house and be under the care of Ashgaz, the king's officer in charge of the concubines. So it just says into a different part of the house. So I think this is just illustrating like the sequence of events, like the protocol for the girls to go to the king and then come back.
Okay, so it wasn't.
It said it's a second house.
Oh,
I've looked at quite a few.
Yeah, the Septuagint says a second. I just had it. Second woman's apartment.
It says in charge of the concubines, so maybe like the king is sleeping with.
From the Brown Driver Briggs, the term for house is a house, a dwelling, habitation, shelter.
But maybe like the ones that he's because it's calling them concubines, right? So a concubine is somebody who is there like pleasing the king. So maybe once they've been taken and they stay the night with him, they're no longer virgins, they go to the second quarters.
So do you think that all these women were being deflowered during this whole process, and only one was kept as the queen, right?
That's how I read it.
That's how I perceive it.
Okay.
So did that answer your question, Gabby?
I think so, yeah. The fact that there was like, I guess when you're saying one was pre-virgin, one was post-virgin, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Virgin. There's no pre-virgin. Just virgin. Okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But this only happened in the 10th month, right? So it took that long to get to her.
Yes.
Well, see, what sort of confuses me with this is that it says that they had to go through a purifying of 12 months.
Yes.
Right? How could it be 10 months when they have to go purifying of 12 months before it happens?
Because it's another 10 months before she goes to see him. That's how I read it, at least.
Oh, so it was actually like a year and 10 months that she got?
Yes, because so they performed their 12-month beautification process, which I looked a lot into. And because I'm like, whoa, 12 months beautification process. And not only that, but this guy, what is his name? That
Okay.
is in charge of them.
Guy or something?
Haggai.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like he's the one that's like helping them undergo this beautification process, and she finds favor in Haggai, and so he takes no time in like giving her cosmetics and her portions of special food and 7 girls from the king's palace to attend to her. Several of like, I only looked at like 2 extra like commentaries about this beautification process. And so what it was saying is that because they were in like such a harsh and dry climate, and it specifically talks about like with the treatment of oil and myrrh in verse 12 for the 6 months, and then perfumes and other cosmetics for like another 6 months, is that they would be treating like their skin because it's so dry in their climate. So they would, it's like basically like 6 months of treating their skin. And the special foods, I don't know how accurate this is, but it was talking a lot about like pomegranates and spices like curcumin and turmeric. And then there's an herb that it was talking about. I'm trying to find it. I took a picture of it on my phone. Sorry. Called fenugreek.
Oh.
And it's considered the finest herb for enhancing feminine beauty. It also aids in sexual stimulation, balances blood sugar levels, and contains choline, which aids the thinking process. It has been the focus of several studies concerning the treatment of diabetes and the prevention of breast cancer, and helps to balance hormone levels and aids in treating PMS and menopause. And
It also
so that, along with the other antioxidant things, it was basically saying like she wouldn't have wanted to, like, you know, on PMS issues, you know, like being crazy or mood swings, like it would have helped prevent that. And so she would have been more pleasing. She was a virgin, so like not like that it's an aphrodisiac, but that it would have helped her like desire. And that they used oils like on their rough skin, and that basically it was like a whole year of like preparing their temple. And so like another commentary that I was reading, like she was preparing like her temple for her husband, and they were kind of mirroring that to like us preparing like our temples for Yeshua. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
What were you gonna say, Monica?
Oh, the fenugreek. I know that it's also used for an increasing like breast milk supply. So if there's anyone out there who's nursing and they're looking to increase their supply, maybe for their baby, that's actually been an herb that's like used widely in breast milk enhancing supply. I don't, but it's a natural way, and yeah, so
I didn't know that.
yeah.
But it kind of makes sense, like if they were using all of these things and eating specific like fruits, like foods, to like help with like being like lessen like the inflammation in the body, like preparing themselves, healing, fighting off like disease and things like that. Because it was also saying like, you know, I think somebody mentioned it last week, like not very many people, like they had to like announce their presence before they could like come in front of him and things like that. I don't know who said that last week, about not being able to just like approach him, but it was talking about, you know, like because people would carry diseases and things. And so like it was like a way to rid the body of like unwanted like skin issues or like internally.
Do you know from the commentaries if this process was specifically saved for this type of scenarios, like for queens, or was it just a thing that was done at some point in women's lives?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because it's kind of breaking down like kind of like by each verse and saying like because I looked up the cosmetics and like I couldn't like that's not the actual word that's being used there. And so one of the commentaries called it a scour and polish, like to scour and polish. So like scour yourself and then like polish yourself up type of process. Because I was like, cosmetics, like what? And
I mean,
so,
you kind of, what you're saying about these women being, the skin being dry and whatnot. I mean, remember from last discussion how rich and how much wealth this guy had, right? So he would obviously want the best of the best. I'm sure that even right now, like my hair's dry, my nails and my hands are dry from working, like I'm not pristine to show up to this guy who has, right? I'm just saying, so you figure this is what they had to do. I would be like, I don't want to show up, if this was a scenario, like embarrassed to like shake my hands because they're so rough,
right. And
I get it, kind of.
in what verse is it? It says like she too was taken. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Decree were that many girls assemble. I think it's verse 8. Yeah, I think starting in verse 8, it says that she too was taken, like, they went across the whole land to acquire virgins from 127 provinces. Okay, so she may not have like really wanted to go, but if you're being like taken there, because you're a virgin, and you're representing your province or something, right? Then you probably like make the best of it, because like what you're saying, like not in a gold digger type of mentality, but making the best of like the situation that you're in.
Well, I mean, not only that, like, okay, so just to add another perspective, teaching people from all over the world, things that we would do in the US, people that we wouldn't do in the US, people in other countries do. For example, in third world countries, sometimes they will marry off a very young girl, 10 years old, younger, 8 years old, to an older 50-year-old man who's very wealthy. And they do that for the sake of the family because they can't provide. They're that poor. And I don't agree with that personally, but they do it. It's customary. And so in this case, I don't really know how old Esther is. What we do know is that it says that she had a nice figure. She was shapely and beautiful. So she was old enough to have a nice body. At least it was worth mentioning in the scriptures that she had a nice body. So I don't know how old, obviously puberty at least, because prior to that, you're not very shapely. And so I do think that, like you guys are saying, maybe she didn't want to go, but she didn't have a mom or a dad. She had this uncle, and who knows? I mean, maybe it was the only opportunity for them to, I don't know, have a better life. And that's speculation, guys. I'm not saying that's scripture. Talking about her not having parents, this is what the Septuagint says for verse 7. I read this earlier and I thought I was really, really confused by it. And it says, and he had a foster child, a daughter of Aminadab, the father's brother, and her name was Esther. And when her parents were dead, he brought her up for a wife for himself. And the damsel was beautiful.
Interesting.
For a wife for himself?
Yes. But then he couldn't
She
Does
was
it say adopted her as his own daughter?
It just says, and he had a foster child, a daughter of Abinadab, his father's brother. Her name was Esther, and when her parents were dead, he brought her up for a wife for himself.
Huh.
The Levitical laws, is that legal or illegal? Do you guys remember?
You can't.
Who is it? It's
It's his niece. You can't do that.
his uncle. It's not his brother's daughter. It's his uncle's daughter.
Oh, you're right. Okay, hold on.
So they would have been cousins.
Oh, then that's fair.
Why does it say that it's the uncle?
Right.
Earlier in verse 7.
Daughter of his father's brother, so that's his uncle.
Yeah.
Father's brother.
I thought I read in a different version that Mordecai was her uncle.
No.
I thought he was too. But
The daughter of.
So they were cousins.
Yes.
and it's fair game, baby.
Oh my gosh.
But I find it interesting too, like in verse 10, when it says that Esther did not disclose her people or family ties because Mordecai had instructed her not to tell anyone. Like, as you know, I guess, it's not saying like that she honored Torah, but obviously we know like she was Jewish or, part of like Israel. And so like what that must have like been like, it must have been kind of lonely, keeping that. But I guess it doesn't necessarily say like she was keeping everything.
I mean, they're in exile, so.
But it also makes me think of like the plot thickens. I really like period piece dramas, so stuff like this, like Jane Austen type stuff, Downton Abbey, war movies. I really like period piece dramas, and a lot of the ones dealing with like kings and queens and stuff. There's always like plots, right, to like gain the king's favor or to gain favor in like a royal court, or people selling secrets and spying on others. And so it kind of, because as we get to the end of the chapter, it says like he would go to like the courtyard area to see her and to inquire after her. Like, so they can't really, they're not really having contact, but he's wanting to make sure that she's okay. And I find that interesting too.
Yeah, all the time he's up there. Sorry guys, I'm trying to find the scripture really quickly. That's why I'm like doing this, but I'll
Sarah, verse 7, the one you read about, and he brought her up for a wife for himself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, I mean, are you saying like he actually took her as a wife, or just it was his intention to take her as a wife?
I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I don't have any viewpoint on it whatsoever.
Yeah,
I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking like maybe she was young when the parents died, so maybe he was like, well, when you get older, you'll be my wife. But then he was like, well, I could send her to the king and
put
it benefited him too.
Right, in the high court to work through. And like, yeah, like the plot thickens, like, and then he hears this plot at the end of them wanting to come after the king, and then he tells her, and then he by proxy of her wins favor with the king.
Yeah. And Monica, when you mentioned about women, the culture, oh, what? I was just like, just cultural, how it's okay, you know, arranged marriages, all this and all that. But we have an example with Lot's daughters, right? They were so desperate for children that they did that thing with their dad, with their own dad. So even here, I mean, even though it might seem like she's being, you know, put in this scenario, she probably wanted it. If Lot's daughters were willing to go that far. God, I'm like dyslexic. You're here for the long run, everyone. There's more to come. Anyway, so I don't know. I'm just thinking, this is obviously your dad versus a king. This is, you know.
Yeah, take the king. But anyway, okay, this is the scripture I was looking for, because we were like, in Leviticus, can she technically be with her uncle as a wife? And we know that that's illegal. That's illegal against Torah. And then we said, well, if it's his uncle's son, which it says, or his uncle's daughter, it would make them first cousins, and that's fair game. And I wanted to find the scripture because I'm sure that people that are watching this might say, excuse me, no, that's incest. You can't marry or be with your cousins. But biblically, first cousins are allowed, but you can't. And if you guys go to Leviticus 18, all of theirs like the unkosher, so to speak, sex, where it's like you can't have sex with your mom, your dad, your brothers, your siblings, your aunt, your uncles. But it is okay to marry your cousins. And here's the scripture. It's Numbers 36, 11. It says, so these are the daughters of, who was it? The name. Zelophehad did as Yahweh commanded Moses. For Mahlah, Tirzah, Haglah, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, were married to their father's brothers' sons. And they did that in order to keep the inheritance within their tribe. So their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of the father, because that was the command. You weren't supposed to, you could marry within Israel, but each one of the Israelites were giving a plot of land, which was the inheritance. And if you start mixing tribes, now you're mixing the inheritance. And the idea was to try to keep it, fair, I guess. Anyway, so marrying your first cousin, guys, is fair game, and it's really gross, and I personally wouldn't, but you can do it according to the Bible. So technically Esther and what is his name, Mordecai, were first cousins, and they could get married legally with the Torah. The other point I wanted to say is that the Septuagint says that he kept her as a wife, or to bring her up as a wife. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they actually had sex, because it says that they were looking for all the virgins or whatever, and she was one of them. And if that was his wife, then that would technically be adultery if she was going to go sleep with another man.
Yeah.
So I think he kept her as a wife, brought her up as one, but maybe she never actually became his wife.
Right. I think that's very true. That she wasn't his wife. Did any of you guys ponder in verse, at the end of verse 15, when it was her time to appear before the king, she didn't ask for anything other than what Haggai, the king's officer in charge of the harem, advised?
I wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
What were they taking with them, and what did this guy actually
advise?
I
don't know. I have thought about that. I'm trying to find this verse at the beginning, talking about Haggai. Okay, here it is. It's verse 9. The girl talking about Esther pleased him, talking about Haggai, and won his favor, so that he lost no time in giving her cosmetics. her portions of special food and 7 girls from the king's palace to attend her. He also promoted her, the girls in the harem's quarter. The beginning of that verse, the girl pleased him and won his favor so that he lost no time in giving her cosmetics and what she required for her beautification process, made me kind of think that like maybe Haggai like was in love with her. And like he knew he couldn't have her, so he was going to make sure that she had the best of what she needed in order to please the king. Like,
I mean, she was really, really beautiful, and men are suckers for that, no matter what.
and it's like he's showering her with the best. Like, what do you do with someone that you like or love? You shower them like with the best that you can.
Gabby, you said that you looked, or sorry, Gabrielle, you said that you looked into cosmetics. What was that?
It didn't actually have like, hold on, let me see here.
Is that in the Septuagint? For those of you reading in the Septuagint, does it actually say cosmetics?
No, it says, this is verse 3. And let the king appoint local governors in all the provinces of his kingdom, and let them select fair and chaste young damsels, and bring them to the city, Susa, into the women's apartment, and let them be consigned to the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, and let things for purification and other attendants be given to them.
Interesting. So it doesn't say cosmetics.
KJV does not say cosmetics either.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm looking here. It says
no, it's like literally not used. And so when I was looking into the beautification process, like that's when it was coming up with like.
I mean, the word in KJV, it says purification. So let the things for purification be given to them. And purification is like soap, perfumery for the bath, detergent, scraping or rubbing.
The score and polish is what this had said, like or scour, score. I don't know how you say that.
Exfoliation. They're exfoliating the skin.
Yeah.
And then you repair, and then like the anti-inflammatory type herbs and stuff to like regulate their hormones, like which gives them more lustrous hair and skin and nails and
that would make sense, because if they're exfoliating and then putting on oils, like their skin is, I mean, like, have you guys heard of the oil cleansing method?
No.
Okay, great. This is awesome. So the oil cleansing method is a really nice way of washing your face. You actually don't use soap at all. You just use oil. So a lot of people use castor oil, because castor is supposed to be good, like a good like cleaner and like disinfectant or whatever. You could use castor oil. You could really use any kind of oil, and you can use essential oils too. And you do that, and what you do, so you put the oil on, you get your face wet, hot. You open your pores, you put the oil, and then you take a steaming cloth and you set it under hot water. You wring it out and you put the cloth on your face, like, I don't know, for like 30 seconds maybe. It's up to you. And then you wipe off really well, like you wipe off all the oils all over. You could do that a couple of times, and it, like I've done it before, it literally cleans your skin so well, and it leaves your skin just like so soft. But anyways, so this actually reminds me of it, because she, like, let's just say detergent, scrubbing, cleaning. So she's doing that to her whole body. And then she's doing these oils like myrrh, perfumes, and they must have been really stinky back then, because they didn't have showers the way that we have showers. Like, we have access to water so easy. Like, we shave our armpits, like these chicks, maybe they did like shave, but imagine if they didn't, like, and they're in this like hot, arid, which some of us live in Arizona in the desert, like, dude, it gets nasty. So no shower, hairy armpits, like you got like purification, detergent, like soap, like that would be a luxury if you didn't have access to a shower and stuff, especially if you're gonna go before like a king. Like, it makes sense that they would be doing that to themselves.
Yeah, it does make sense, but reading that, it kind of makes me think Haggai like loved her.
Probably she was shapely.
The plot thickens.
I want to ask you guys this really quick, if you guys want to move on. Like in the New Testament, and like we read like, oh, a woman's beauty shouldn't be like with golden braids, blah blah blah, because back then, whatever. But like, I just want to know your guys' opinion on these women taking care of themselves for a year, because I feel like coming out of the church, like, we're kind of taught that that's vanity. If you want to take care of yourself, that's vanity. And when I read this Esther for a whole year, like, it changes my perspective, because I'm like, okay, taking care of ourselves does matter, especially like if we're married. It does matter. We can't just be like he wanted beautiful virgins. Like, that stuff mattered. And I just wanted to know like your guys' thoughts on that.
I do see some, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but the hippie stuff. Not like the hippie crunchy stuff, but the hippie hair crazy, you know what I mean? Like unkept, oily, super thick, oily faces, like raggedy clothes. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I do see that sometimes being emphasized, or not emphasized, but kind of like endorsed in a way, like, oh, if you follow Torah, this is what you had, no makeup, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I don't feel like that's the right thing. Like, that's how God wants us to be. Not to say that God wants us to be vain either. So I know there is a balance right there, and I would love to explore that more with women like you guys, women like you, to find out what the line is, and what is it that we should do, and how to not cross that line.
I'll read the verse since we're talking about it. It's in 1 Peter 3:3. And this is what it says in ESV. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. So the way I read that is, don't try to stick out with what you're wearing or how you look. Like, don't try to always stand out from who you're going to be around, I guess. Not saying that you can't wear makeup, because I have some on right now. But try not to just stick out by what you're doing.
But like, so I've heard it said that was specifically to those women, because they were doing that and they were bringing their culture into coming into the Torah, like knowledge of Torah, where they were like dressing like that. But in this case, like, Esther was trying to stick out. Wouldn't you? I mean, that's how I think of it. Like, she's trying to be picked.
Who is she trying to be picked by?
Yeah.
The king.
She's
the king, one person. And if we look at 1 Peter 3, starting at the beginning, it's talking about wives and husbands. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands. Mm-hmm. So that's what it starts out talking about, is a husband and wife relationship. So when Esther was doing all of that, she was doing it for the king. She wasn't doing it for a whole slew of men to look at her.
No, yeah, and absolutely, yeah, definitely.
I kind of view that particular verse in Peter as like our world is driven, like whatever culture you're from, doesn't matter. Like, not just American and like Hollywood and celebrities from America, but any culture is seriously driven by like this constant like wantingness of like materialism, and even like aspiring like physical attributes. And so that's kind of how I see that verse pertaining to, like, don't let yourself be caught up in like constantly chasing after these things. I, like being in the fitness industry, I saw that quite a bit. Like everyone wants like a tiny itty bitty waist, and every woman is working on their glutes and getting them bigger, like Cardi B or, J Lo, like all of these women that are like flashed in front of our face and saying like, this is beautiful, like Kylie Jenner and that, all the Kardashian crew, like that's kind of how I take that verse. Like women spend so much of their time, and I am guilty of it too at times, like pursuing this image and, the countless hours like that we spend like on our faces in the hair salon, nail salon, in the gym, obsessing over every little calorie, obsessing over our clothes, following, fashion bloggers and all these like Instagram famous people that make us feel like our ordinary lives are less than because we're not out like traveling the world or wearing these specific types of clothes that look like you're wearing panties with like a see-through skirt over it. Like, what? So that's kind of how I take that verse. It probably applied then, kind of like what you're saying, Monica, and it definitely applies now. Like, don't be caught up in all of that. Like, focus on, your prayer life and that inward beauty that only God gives, and, that a humble, woman can offer. And that's just kind of how I take that, just like, don't. And I had to tell myself that, like, don't be like, where are you directing like your focus and your energy? Like, don't be chasing things that are fleeting. They go away, young, like like being young and having youthful appearance, like it's fleeting. Not saying not to take care of yourself, but at the end of the day, like if you live into your old age, you're not going to look like you look like now. So like, do you want to look back and be like, are you going to think like, oh, I should have spent like, more time in the gym or like, gone here more or did more plastic surgery? Or are you going to look back and be like, you know what, like that was kind of like all like for naught, because I'm here now in my old age and I realize that doesn't matter. Like what I was chasing, that outward beautification doesn't matter, because, Eve fell through seeing the apple, the temptation.
I sort of see what you're saying as well, because when you keep reading in 1 Peter 3 and you come to verse 4, it says, instead, let it be in the hidden person of the heart, with the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious.
Yeah.
Were any of you ladies a little bit shy or embarrassed when you guys were coming of age? Like the first time you wore lipstick or something in front of your dad, specifically your father, like, oh my gosh, my dad's gonna disapprove. Did any of you guys go through that?
I remember wearing a bikini for the first time in front of my dad, and it was hard for me, and it was even harder for him.
Okay. That's kind of what I picture. Like, okay, if we're gonna put on so much makeup and XYZ with clothing, is that how we would be in front of our
dad?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, obviously no. If you have some decency, the answer would be no.
Yeah. And even like I've even been told, by other women, like, I don't see a problem with, that are, they're other Christian women, and they say like, I don't see a problem with how, like the culture dresses, like I dress like that, like, and I don't see that there's a problem. And I'm just like, okay, if like Yehovah like was standing in front of you, if God was standing in front of you, would you be comfortable in what you're wearing?
Exactly.
If you knew he was swimming at the swimming pool, would you wear a bikini to go swimming that day?
Right. I probably would be like,
where's the towel? Give me a towel.
Which, so now we're kind of getting into modesty here. And but having like proper modesty, like Esther, like what we've said, like she went through a beautification process. So obviously, like that is important. Like it is important to take care of ourselves and not to neglect our temples. And if you're single, like I fully believe like you should be preparing your body, regulating your hormones and all naturally, without toxic birth control, which is like a whole other like subject. But doing that in order to prepare yourself for your husband and your children, like they need a healthy chamber to thrive in their first 9 months of life. And so I do think it's important, but like Gabby said, I think there is a line, and I think that's where you have to like check your priorities or like your heart. Like, am I investing too much time in chasing after something that is like just fleeting? But if you're focused like inwardly and like healing inwardly, like your hormones and gut or whatever else might be going on, like that's only going to like reward you continuously.
And I feel like all that culture you talked about with all the ladies you mentioned, Kardashians, all them, they're very fake, right? Fake nails, fake eyelashes, fake everything. So when you start taking care of yourself, though, the right way, the real beauty comes out, right? Like you don't have to wear fake nails. You take care of your nails, they'll actually grow healthy on their own. If you exfoliate your face, like how Monica was saying, I can guarantee you that your skin will be brightened and better, right? Where you won't even need foundation. I will like put my money on that you won't need foundation if you would take care of your skin the right way. So your eyelashes. Oh.
Well, not exactly. So not only that, but when you do that, because the skin has natural oils, and when we wash our face normal, it strips our face of oil. And when you're cleaning like with like, oil with oil, it actually like it improves the texture of your skin. It helps to clear like blemishes. Also, it helps with hyperpigmentation. So when you do oil, like a lot of women use castor oil to make their hair grow and their eyebrows grow and their eyelashes grow. Also, just throwing this in there, rosemary oil is a really, and maybe we can talk about this in like beauty products, like maybe when we're done with the book of Esther, but natural beauty products. But just really quickly, rosemary oil is actually shown. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Rogaine. It's like this shampoo that has this chemical that stimulates hair growth. Rosemary oil was put in test trials, clinical trials, and you guys can actually look this up on PubMed, which is a medical journal online. It produced the same exact results. Rosemary oil produced the exact same results as Rogaine. So it's like a natural alternative to hair growth, and it has like real results, like medical trials. And anyways, so stuff like that, like absolutely. And I've never even considered that, Gabby, that when you start taking care of yourself the right way, you don't need the fake. The real comes. Like you take care of your body, you start working out, like you don't need to put a fake butt in your butt. Like you will have a nice shape naturally, and it doesn't need to grow. I personally
It doesn't need to grow.
no, it's weird.
I love that. I'm sorry. It's so cute.
Hair is growing on her. It's just very weird. It's so unnatural. But I think that when we take care of our bodies, we work out, we exercise, do all that stuff, we eat right, our bodies will naturally have like Esther will have a nice, beautiful shape to our bodies. And it's not lipoed, a natural shape. It's not lipoed, it's not injections, it's not implants or silicone. It's just natural. And I'll be honest, you guys, when I see what they do, and this Kylie, I cannot help but think like, what is going to happen to her 10 years, 20 years from now? What kind of diseases is her body going to produce from having this unnatural, like toxic chemicals injected and removed and all this like stuff. Like I just seriously think of cancer when I think of them. Anyways, and I'm not trying to like judge them. Like they don't have truth in their life, because if they did, they would eventually, these things would fall off. That's what happens. Like
Right.
Gabrielle, you shared like you used to struggle with that. So have I. Like I've struggled with that too. And I've had to like cut out a lot of stuff, because, and even like friends, because that is not producing the fruit of like peace, gentleness, kindness. It doesn't produce confidence or security. It makes you feel very insecure.
Yes. And also, like, kind of going off, like you saying, like, you're not judging them, us being like Torah believing women, and even I would challenge like Christian women, like we're Torah observant Christians, okay, but just Christian women, like I would challenge like to do like a social media like cleansing. Like who do you follow? Like are you constantly like judging yourself like based off of what they look like? Because if you are and you're putting yourself down because of what they look like, then you shouldn't be following that account. Like you shouldn't be second guessing yourself. And if you're following somebody that makes you second guess your worth or what you have or your family life or your prayer life, then like, don't give that access. And I'd also challenge like, why do you look up to worldly women? Like, really? Like, why? Like, if you're a Christian woman or a Torah observant Christian, like, why are we looking at worldly women like they're going to offer us anything that is life sustaining or foundational? They're not. And we just shouldn't, like, it's not worth it. Like, why do we follow worldly women for fashion advice or like beauty advice? They're using, like you said, toxic chemicals. They're injecting themselves with toxic things, toxic makeup, toxic hair care products, like all of that. Like all of that is an attack by Satan on our temples, is how I look at it now, which might be kind of extreme.
I
But
mean, I honestly see it like that too. When I see that women, especially young women, are like changing the way their bodies to such an extent that these women are getting surgery and doing this and that, I personally do view that as an attack from Satan. But what's even, I guess, like more concerning is that all of it is a fad. Like stuff, like you guys are much younger than me, but when I was like in high school, breast implants were like the thing. Like that was the thing.
In
Pamela
high school?
in high school. So I don't know if do you guys know who Pamela Anderson is?
yeah.
Okay. Baywatch. I see, this is when I was growing up, so I'm aging myself. But breast implants were the thing. So girls in high school and more so like in college, everyone was getting breast implants. I mean, everyone. It was so saturated to the point where I even was like, dude, I want to get breast implants. Like I literally was like thinking about it. And that was way before I was Torah observant, way before I was even a Christian. And it was just so prevalent though. But then, okay, then breast implants kind of faded out. And then it's like you get this new wave of like butt implants or whatever it is that they're doing now. And it's like, I see it as like, dude, it's a fad. What happens when that wave goes, like, what's next? Then you're going to be like, what are you going to do with all that? What?
I said eyebrow implants, like those thick shaped things.
Oh, so in the 90s, in the 90s, guys, yes, in the 90s, thin eyebrows were it. Like Pam Anderson was like thin eyebrows, big old boobs, skinny, like just skinny. and they went like that. No, I'm kidding. But after that, now it was like bushy eyebrows and being thick, not skinny, like thick. So anyways, it's like, to me, it's like fads, but like they're doing all these like body modifications. What happens when your body goes out of style? Like, then what do you do? And there's like, some of that stuff I think is irreversible, quite frankly, and that's scary. I don't know. Anyways, tangent.
It's so funny that we're talking about that stuff, like surgery today. I was, I'm postpartum, 2.5 months, and I don't have my body bag, okay? So it is weird because with Eleazar, I had to go on a dairy-free diet, so I lost so much weight because I didn't know what to eat. I was new to all of that dairy-free stuff. And with Alina, I just kept doing what I'm doing because I've been dairy free for a while. So yeah, I haven't lost what I want to lose already. So I look at my belly and I'm like, man, what's going on? What happened here? And I just have to self-love on myself, liposuction would be pretty nice right now. These thoughts go through my head, and you just gotta, it's an attack, I think, right? Like, hey, you're ugly or whatever, but you just gotta get through it and be like, okay, give it some time and I started exercising as soon as I could, like, I don't know, 6 weeks or 7 weeks. So just slowly, of course, not like full on marathon, but so it's not like I'm not doing anything for it, but yeah, it's like that desperate, I want to look like I used to before thought. That's, just for pregnancy stuff. That's where I'm at right now.
I mean, Vashti gave it a year, so, or Esther, she took a whole year.
I know. What can I rub on my belly to just get it to shrink back, all that.
There is stuff you can do, Gabby, and like, I think it would be cool to dedicate an entire video to like natural beauty clothing, like modesty, and also like stuff like mom body. So because there's like dad bod, mom bod, but like you can wrap. Have you wrapped your stomach at all?
No, I never bought one of those, what is it called?
No, you don't need, you don't need to buy that. You can get something way less expensive that'll work just as effectively. I did that.
Okay, but does that get your skin though? Like, does your skin tighten up?
So there's two things that you can do for your skin if you have saggy or like loose skin. One is dry brushing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but you can do that even if you don't have, like, you can do that all over your body because it's really good for your lymph.
I do that every morning.
Yeah.
Dry brushing? What is that? Oh.
Okay. Well, okay. Essentially, I'll just really quickly, and then I think it'd be cool for us to dedicate an entire video to like, kind of to Esther, like things that we can do naturally to take care of our bodies.
I looked up an Esther diet just to throw that in there, Queen Esther diet, because I was like, I want to know how this.
Okay,
okay, so dry brushing is literally, and I'll send you a picture, Gabby. And then in another video, I'll grab my brush, and Gabby, you can grab yours too. But you literally get a dry brush, and so if you want to do it for lymph, you just like do it all over your body dry. But specifically for the stomach with saggy, loose skin, you do it over your stomach, and you can go in circles, you can go across, like circles like this, you can go across. It's a specific kind of brush, and I'll show you later. You can do that for 2 to 5 minutes every day, and you just go over it. And I have seen moms get results like you wouldn't believe. That's one. The second thing you can do is something called fascia blasting. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but I have a girlfriend who had like 6 kids, and she had like her stomach, I mean, she'd been pregnant so many times, she had like that belly hang thing, and she did it, and it like pretty much made it go away. So that's another thing. And then the last thing that you could do is derma rolling, and that involves like a derma roller or like micro needling. And now you're kind of getting into some other kind of stuff. It's still like a more natural way, no surgery, no injections, nothing like that. That's like, I guess, the last thing. But derma rollers are like super cheap, $20 or something. It's like nothing. So there's a lot you can do. And then on the other side, that's superficially, like that's the skin. The other thing you can look into is to see if you have diastasis recti, DR, which is like the separation of the abs, which makes the stomach protrude still. So it's not even fat, it's just the muscles. And there's exercises you can do that make it go like this and make it go flat again.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I mean, I know you want to like we should actually dedicate separate channels or videos for all this, but I mean, honestly, talking about beauty, I feel like this is all relevant though, because some women, it's like, okay, what was it? What is beauty, right? So what's Esther doing? So it kind of, I don't know. I'm hoping if anybody is joining us and listening, this might be helpful for them too, like it is for me, you know?
Well, we can definitely dedicate, like, talk about brushes, like the technique, fascia blasting, which I think is so funny, but you guys, it is so effective. If you have cellulite, this stuff is revolutionary, and it's over the skin. It is so natural, like, and it's something that you'd be like, excuse me, no way that works. It works.
That's funny. It looks like a funny tool, actually.
Yeah, I have one.
A fascia blaster or a dry brush?
Both.
Oh, you have a fascia blaster? No way.
Yeah, I don't use it as often as I should, but when like I'm in I use like just I want to get back to the rest of the study, but like I haven't really used that, but you know, like the massager balls you can buy like from Marshall's or Ross or wherever, like they kind of roll and like glide, like, you know, some of them have handles and they'll have like different balls and they're like for massaging. I used to use that like faithfully, like in the shower on the sides of my legs, because that's where I have a little bit of cellulite, and just like for a minute on each thigh, and I like zero, and no amount of like workouts like would ever truly get rid of all of that. But when I did that faithfully, that definitely helped a lot. But I was gonna ask, so we don't know what the gift was that she brought to the king. Right, and I'm kind of, I don't know if you guys kind of think maybe like Haggai loved her or whatever. That's why he's giving her all this like good stuff and inside information about how to win the king over. But I do find it interesting, you know, it goes to say in 17 that the king loved Esther more than all the women. She won grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, and they set the royal crown on her head. And then it goes in, we skip forward to 19, and it's talking about how Mordecai would sit at the king's gate, and Esther had not revealed her family ties or her people as Mordecai had ordered her, for Esther continued obeying what Mordecai told her to do, as she had when he was raising her. So talking about like obedience. So she's showing obedience, you know, to this father / maybe she never looked at him as like a husband. Like if he raised her from a girl, you're probably going to look at that guy as like, he's my dad. But he probably intended as she got older to marry her, which probably would have been really weird for her. So instead of marrying this father figure, she gets a king, but she's still obeying him as he taught her to do. and as she knew how, and it's constantly saying she's won favor, like with all these, like in anyone's eyes. Like, so what characteristics do you think as like a woman, and especially as like, you know, a Torah observant woman, like would win us favor in others' eyes and like in authority too? Because, you know, all these men were in like great authority that she was winning favor with. And, you know, eventually as we go on, you know, she's able to use that in a good way, good powers. So like, what characteristics do you think she must have had, based off of what we know right now, and her obedience, like besides the obedience that would have won her favor? Anything?
Well, I think, okay, so I mean, besides obedience winning her favor, so obviously I think it's mentioned in there that she was beautiful, so that counts. I think, like, I keep thinking of New Testament scriptures for some reason, but like it says, husbands love your wives and wives respect your husbands. And I think that her being respectful and obedient, I mean, she did everything that everyone said. Like the eunuch guy is like, here's some inside information, do this. And then she obeys, she does it, and then she gets favor. And everything that Mordecai's telling her, I'm sure that she can see, like, what this guy's telling me is working, so I'm going to keep doing it. And then another thing is, I think it was you, Gabrielle, that said, like, he intended to marry her. Maybe she didn't know that, but like, it kind of makes sense, because if she had no mom or dad, she was an orphan, like, where else would she go? Like, I think too, marriage back in those days, it wasn't what it necessarily is today. Marriage was also something where you're taking care of and providing. And so I think in him doing that, it's like he was essentially protecting her so that nothing bad would happen to her. She was an orphan, you know? And technically, I think maybe it would even be considered his duty, because she comes from his, what was it? His uncle's daughter. So it was his father's household.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, like, he's fulfilling the commandments of Torah to marry her. If that was the case, and I take the Septuagint over Masoretic any day, so.
Well, we know obedience is a big deal. I mean, that's the whole point of this whole, well, not this whole Esther story. Sorry. This is why Esther got that position, because Vashti was being disobedient. I don't know.
Another thing that came to my mind was the verses that we read in 1 Peter earlier, and talking about a meek and quiet spirit. So maybe she also had something like that, because it seemed like Vashti might not have had that since she disobeyed the king's orders, even though we sort of already talked about how we think what she did was probably not that bad of a thing. Mm-hmm. But maybe Esther had something like that as well.
Like, yeah, maybe like she brought peace, like with that, like humility and grace. Mm-hmm. That, I don't know, like to the king himself, and, you know, the obeying as Mordecai, like as he had raised her to do. And then like that kind of just like made me reflect, you know, like my dad wasn't like a very like vocal father, like I expect you to do this and not this. But there were like, there's a few key times that like I legit let him down and, you know, like soul crushing, like type of letdowns. Cause you know, I definitely had a lot of rebel years that were pretty hardcore. And the biggest part throughout all of that was there were certain instances where my mom made me go tell my father And that was harder than like anything else. Is so like just, I don't know, the fact that like she always obeyed like what he said to do. And you know, some things like go without saying, but that wasn't really the case for me. But anyways, but like the love and I guess the favor, yeah, that does come from obeying, and the reward that comes from, you know, obeying the Torah. Like it is a set guideline and instructions. And until I had the Torah in my life, I was still like a Christian that would repeatedly disobey, you know, like commands. And so you're just like, I'm like, what's that scripture? I would always think like, how can sin be dead? Like when I'm still struggling, like, how can I be dead to sin? Like if I'm still struggling, like so much with with certain things. And it didn't all like become clear until I started obeying Torah, realizing that Torah is a set of guidelines that we're supposed to, not guidelines, but you know, commands that we're supposed to live by in honor. And by doing so, it brings life into every avenue of our lives. And like I said, until I started honoring Torah and obeying, you know, I was still fumbling and messing up. And now, I mean, like, yeah, there's a few things I still mess up with, but now I'm just like, man, that fine line that we talk about sometimes, I'm like, it is clear. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to be held accountable. Like, that is like my ultimate fear. I'm just like, please, 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 please. Like, he is coming and like, he will judge. And I'm like, please advocate for me. Like, you know, please don't let me be so thinking I'm so great with you and I'm not. Like, you know, like correct me. Like I'm asking for that now. So I just feel like that's a lot of like what Esther did too.
And that's the one thing that people misunderstand, is they think that following Torah is for salvation, but you said it, you know, very well. It's being judged, right? So you're still going to be held accountable for everything that you do. Being saved, that's a whole, this is not about being saved following Torah.
Right.
So anyways, just wanted to make that clear, that it's just about.
Sorry, I meant to like tie that over and
Yeah.
I didn't finish that thought, but yeah.
Good.
And then, yeah.
Oh.
Anything else, guys? Any other thoughts or anything we didn't cover?
I mean, I think the rest is just like explanatory. Like he hears of a plot and then they use that to, and then Mordecai finds favor in his eyes, in the king's eyes through Esther. And then has she revealed at that time?
No, not yet.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go.
To say that I have my eyes on Mordecai because he seems very manipulative in this whole thing. I'm watching him this whole time. We'll see.
It's funny because I saw it as loving, and obviously we still need to get through the rest of the book, but I was like, oh, he's so loving. Like he's always checking on her to see what's going on. And
I kind of see it as Gabby, like I really see it as like the plot thickens. Here's his chance to have the king's ear through Esther, who obeys him still, which is that's not a fault in Esther at all, because obviously she's rewarded for her obedience, and God is ultimately able to use that through her obedience. But I don't know the rest of the story of Esther, and so I feel like it's the plot thickens. Mordecai is hanging around, waiting to see Esther from the courtyard all the time. He's keeping tabs, okay? And then he's hanging around like the guard wall, and he just so happens to hear a plot, and the plot is true, so that's good. Like, the king's life is saved. But still, what does anyone know what the name Mordecai means in Hebrew? Because all Hebrew names have meaning.
I'm on it. I want to know.
It's just saying little man or worshiper of Mars.
Worshipper of Mars?
Like a warrior or follower, worshiper of Marduk, Babylonian deity.
Okay, so he was named after a Babylon deity, which, I mean, would make sense because it said that he was exiled at the beginning of the chapter. Or in the middle, when it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Babylon had carried him off or made him go away.
Mm.
But that is still being named after a Babylonian deity, even in exile, like, you know.
The translation I saw is just said a foreign derivation, an Israelite. That's what my concordance says. It doesn't say.
Brown Driver Briggs is the one that says it's little man or worshiper of Mars. The Strong's just says what Monica said.
Yeah, an Israelite. I don't know.
Interesting. It's interesting that it says Mars, Sierra.
Yeah, that's what it says.
But I guess that they've had these names for planets for a long time. Right? I mean,
At least
What they have these names for what? For how long?
like planets for a long time. Which
Oh yeah.
obviously planet is not like a real word that's used in the Bible, but he's named after a deity, and then it says Mars. And we know, like in Revelation, that the planets will be judged. How do you judge a planet? Or it's really a deity, a wandering star. Which that's also like a whole other.
that's another Bible study in and of itself.
Yeah.
Do we know how long they've been in Babylon? Well, they've been in exile for?
When I read the historic background, let me see. So it says 474 BCE, before Christ.
Yeah.
Was when Queen Esther's intercession, because of her intercession, he allows the Jews to defend themselves later on, like in chapter 8 and 9, but it gives the date 474 BCE.
Well, we'll just have to pay attention to this guy, because we're like thinking the same thing, Gabrielle, and myself. So we'll see.
All right, guys. So, just any closing thoughts? We covered a lot. I mean, this was a thick chapter. Like, I'm really glad. I really enjoyed it because we talked about things that are relevant even today, like beauty and those things. I think it's really important that we discuss those things. Also, how to take care of our bodies. For sure, we're definitely going to go deeper into that. So those of you joining us, if you guys are interested in that type of stuff, please subscribe or consider subscribing, and make sure you stick around, because we're definitely going to talk about those things. Also, go ahead and feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments. We will do our best to try to respond to everyone, if possible. So we will be back again. We do this every week. So we'll be back again next week, and we're going to look at chapter 3. All right. So it was wonderful talking to you ladies. I really enjoyed our study, and we'll meet again next week. Bye, guys.